Hello there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from any part of the world you're listening to me from. Thank you for joining us on this very special edition of BET series, Biologists Explain This. And in this particular edition, we'll be looking at the issues regarding learning disabilities and learning difficulties. It is very important to me as a tutor, for example, because having taught for more than 25 years, I've seen all kinds of students who struggle through the academics because they were not understood. Now, if you are listening to me from any part of the world where you have been diagnosed with any of these difficulties, I would love to hear your story. Of course, you can choose to remain anonymous. But it's important for us to learn from other people's experiences. Of course, there are issues that some of us who are adults had when we were growing up that were not addressed, and they shaped the future they were living in right now as adults. And so if you have a child, for example, if you're able to go through these videos, having gone through it and listened to it and learned from it, you will be in a much better position to help your child. Because many of us as parents or adults, we are quick to judge, we are quick to discountenance and talk down on any child. Now we look at children most often from the perspectives of academic performance and achievements alone. Now there's more to every individual beyond academic excellence. So the world is beyond or just academic achievement alone. And so for those of us who are new to this channel, I would love you to please get our video on what school won't teach you, parts 1 and 2. You will learn a lot about how you have to ensure that you don't just learn academically, but you learn about life, because life is evolving and the world we are going into is entirely different from where we were and where we are right now. There's an evolution going on and we have to evolve with time. So it's also important for our educational system and structure to evolve and to transit from what we have now. The status quo is not helping many children. Like for example, you've got children that are not able to do calculations and they are not able to read words, and they are just lost hope. They gave up, and so we give up too soon. And so this video is going to enlighten us and educate us on the different issues that can affect children. And unfortunately, if not addressed, these issues grow up with the child, and the child grows up becoming a problem to himself, to other people around him, and becomes worried. Okay, so it's important for us to understand this. So I want you to grab your snack, take your chair, sit, call somebody else, and please, at the end of this video, share this video with so many people. It will help many families, parents, tutors, school owners. It's going to help many adults to even understand themselves. If you're an adult watching this video, it will help you to understand how you got to where you are. So I can learn to appreciate yourself and not compare yourself with others, because we are all unique personalities. So come along with us and let's enjoy this video together. I still remain your friend, your tutor, your biologist, Peters Abiodun. So let's go together. Now, as we always do, the content of this particular edition will focus on the following. What is learning in the first instance? Now, how do we learn? What are learning disabilities and difficulties, and how do they differ? Then what are the major types of learning disabilities or difficulties? And then what are the signs to look out for so that you can help that person? And then, of course, what is the issue of all-inclusive education to accommodate and help those who have any kind of learning difficulty? Very interesting particular issue here. Now look at this slide. It's a chronicle of celebrities that you and I idolize, talk about today. So you have against their names the disorders they have. So I don't know which of them you have, but you have this chronicle here. You've got Whoopi Goldberg, that's the lead actress of Sister Acts, and then this color purple, and then she's very popular. You have Anderson Cooper of CNN. You've got Michael Phelps, the gold medalist, at least sometimes gold medalist in the Olympics. You've got Justin Timberlake, and of course you've got our very own John Wick, okay, Keanu Reeves. And so you've got the chronicle, you've got all the disorders that they were diagnosed with, and they still succeeded in life. So it's important as we set out on this particular journey, this study, this expository study on learning difficulty, to understand that having a learning difficulty does not mean that the person cannot still succeed in life. So if you want to learn about these individuals, you have encountered them, you've watched their videos, you've heard about their story. Of course, Daniel Radcliffe is the star of the franchise Harry Potter. And so he also had a learning disorder. So what it means is that having a difficulty does not mean that you cannot succeed in life. But the issue is these difficulties have to be diagnosed early and then understood, so that that particular individual can be helped through life to manage that situation and still make the most of it, because there is a strength in everyone that can be maximized and capitalized on to make the person the best he or she can be. And so, what does it mean to learn in the first instance? Now, learning is all about acquiring knowledge or skills by studying or having experiences or being taught in a formal setting like a class, or you are an apprentice to somebody else. So, it's a process of just acquiring knowledge, understanding somebody else to become like that person or to learn what that person has. So you're acquiring skills, behaviors, values, attitudes, and preferences. Children learn from adults and parents, for example. So learning is just about acquiring information from people around you in different forms. And it's important, before we go into the study itself, to look at who can make a diagnosis. And so, if you are listening to me in this edition, in this video, and you are a student, okay, and you are trying to struggle with what to study in life, you may try to pursue career in these areas. Now, psychology is very broad. And so you may want to become a neuropsychologist, you can want to become a clinical psychologist, you may want to just study psychology because it's a broad field that can help a lot of people. And so diagnosis is made by different psychologists, and of course you've got psychiatrists also. So it's a field that students listening to me may want to explore. So you can work to help other people. You can make psychology a career, because you'll be helping a lot of people to live a better life than they are living presently. And then, how is diagnosis made to know that somebody has a learning disability? Of course, there's the issue of academic testing that tries to compare an individual's achievement test, okay, result of that achievement test, with the intelligence quotient, what they call the IQ of the person. Now, when the results are obtained, if the person's IQ test is lower than the achievement test, so you can Google achievement test and learn more about that, then it may indicate a learning disability. IQ test, that is intelligence quotient, is a measure, okay, a standard measure of how the person's intellect is assessed. And so if the person's IQ is lower than achievement test, that person may have a learning disability. Remember, having a learning difficulty does not mean that the person can't succeed in life. It only means that there's a deficiency somewhere else in some aspects of life, or in some aspects of cognitive capability, but the person can do fantastic well, as we saw in the life, in the story of, or the chronicle of those celebrities on the second slide. And of course, we come to the issue of diagnosis again. You can also diagnose with them performance review, okay? You can have medical history. This is very important, because some kinds of disabilities run in families. Yeah, you heard me right. If you're a parent listening to me, it's possible that you are seeing your child in you, or you are seeing you in your child, so to say. Usually as adults, we hide our deficiencies. We don't want our child to know. We don't want people to know. But excuse me, please, if you are seeing that child, you are seeing you in that child, you remember your background, how you struggle through life. I know most parents say, I came first. Everybody comes first. Of course, that's a lie anyway, of course. But if you are being factual and realistic, and you want to help your child through life, please be factual with that child. Every parent should study his or her child, learn that child's weaknesses, so that you can begin to help as early as you can, so that child does not become a problem. So medical history is important, because some disabilities are genetic, so that child might have inherited that learning problem from you as a parent, so to say. And of course, you can also do tests The test can be physical or in nature, they can be neurological. And so, what is learning disability? This is often confused with learning difficulty. Now, we want to ensure that we elucidate on this. We want to clarify that everybody can know that learning disability ain't the same as learning difficulty. Now, according to CCLD, that's the Coordinated Campaign for Learning Disabilities. Now, this is a group of people that studied this. Now, they defined this disability issue as a neurobiological disorder in which a person's brain works, okay, or is structured differently. In other words, you see things from a different point of view. You don't have the capability that others have, and so it's like a deficiency. Okay, and we also have this group, Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Okay, there's an edition that discussed this and talked about learning disability as disorders in reading, that's one, in mathematics, that's two, and in written expression. So three things here: reading, okay, computations, and then writing skills. So disability is encompassing. It's much terrible, much worse than difficulty, as we're going to see. So when somebody has a disability, it's usually a neurological situation, affects the nervous system, the brain, and things like that. So it's much broader than having a learning difficulty. We are going to see more as we proceed. And of course, let's look at this issue again of this. Remember, we are looking at definitions and descriptions given by experts, bodies, and organizations. And then we've got the Disabilities Education Act, okay, in the UK that says that, look, it's a law and it talks about the specific learning disability, that's SLD. It describes it as a disorder, okay, in one or more of the basic psychological processes involved in understanding and using spoken or written language. So the person has a difficulty, that's a disorder in being able to process and understand or speak. And so skills of listening, skills of speaking, skills of reading, writing, and all mathematics are or may be negatively affected. That's what that idea talked about. So that act is trying to give a clarification on who to categorize in what we are discussing as being affected by these difficulties or disorders as we are looking at them. And so the academic achievement, okay, that we have talked about earlier on is a measure, okay, is used to measure the person's achievement, okay, academically, and substantially, if the person performs below expectations, okay, now if the person's academic achievement for the person's age, for example, now when the child is in the kindergarten, is in the nursery, is the primary, the high school, there are things that you expect that child to have accomplished. So the achievement test is talking about the person's achievement at that stage of that person's life based on expectation of that age that is peculiar to all children or individuals at that stage. And so what learning disability is not. So we have been seeing what it is. So in order to clear the air that there's no confusion, it's not the same, okay, as attention disorders. So we're going to talk about ADHD, that is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder later. And then learning disability is not the same as mental retardation or autism or impairment like that, or physical disabilities or disorders that are emotion. Okay, so it's not all of those things. And disabilities that we're talking about, they are not caused by lack of opportunities to learn. And still talking about what learning disability is not. It is not lack of educational opportunities. It's not that the person was not given the opportunity to go to school. There are people whose parents couldn't afford them to go to school, for example. That's an aspect of it. Some people changing school frequently, you have to start afresh all over again, or your school is not well equipped, like for example. So learning disability is not those things. People can be limited by the environment where they attended, the school they attended, where they study, the family where they grew, the neighborhood where they live. Those are things that are not covered by learning disability. So let's clear that here so that there's no confusion in this aspect. And what are the likely causes of learning disability? We want to look at that quickly now. Now, what are the common causes? Briefly, they are, of course, it's broader than this, but just the major ones. Now, a person's brain development might be affected either before birth, that's before delivery, and during birth, because the birth process can be very painful, can be tedious, for example. And if the labor is extended, taking too long, there can be lack of oxygen that can affect the person's brain. So we are looking at the fact that the mother may be ill during pregnancy. There are some pregnancies that would affect the fetus in the womb, because the fetus gets supplies from the mother, across the placenta through the umbilical cord. There are children who have microcephaly, because the fact that the mother was alcoholic or was into illicit drugs, and then the umbilical cord shrank, affecting the blood vessels that transport nutrients and oxygen to the fetus while growing. And so there are issues during pregnancy that can arise, and the child may have meningitis, which is a very devastating the disease at childhood, which can affect him or her. And so there are health challenges. Of course, there are people who have disabilities when they had mental disorders, Parkinson's syndrome, for example. So later in life, the brain capacity may depreciate for different reasons, and some people might have had stroke, for example. Stroke affects the brain, a part of the brain. So we've got two cerebral hemispheres, the left or right hemispheres. That these cerebral hemispheres process information that we receive, information stimuli and things like that. So cerebrum is the part of the brain that processes information and stimuli and personalities. And so when you read and you are learning, as you are listening to me now and you're trying to understand and make a sense out of what I'm saying, you are using cerebrum. So somebody else who has stroke may have a problem processing information like we have when it comes to learning. And so what do you look out for? So I mean, if you not that you go around now suspecting everybody or trying to look at yourself as a no good, for example, but we are trying to say that if you look at these signs, so look at yourself first off, start with yourself, because it begins with accepting yourself, trying to understand yourself. How do you get to where you are? So if you have had to struggle, for example, whatever you have had to struggle with, understanding your personalities, your peculiarity and your differences from others may help you to help other people around you, beginning with your own children, for example. So knowing what you know can help you to accept yourself and go out loud with confidence, a lot of what you have and what you know now, to help others. But please, it's not as if you go all around suspecting everybody. Don't go around trying to stereotype or put somebody in a mold and begin to say this guy, this species, this. That's not the whole idea of this video. It's just for the sake of information and exposure to ensure that we don't live in the dark. Because they say knowledge is power, and so the more you know, the more you are enlightened, and then you can do something to help yourself and other people with the information that you have learned. So some problems in school at a particular stage of life could have been handled if those students passed through as tutors or parents or families or siblings knew what you are knowing now. And so learning disabilities can be blamed on lack of motivation or immaturity or whatever, but there are underlying factors that are overlooked. So if a child has significant and ongoing problems, having to do with skills of reading, writing, or whatever, that's what to look out for. So if your child is struggling, is not coming the best, it's not on the commendation list, the child is struggling with mathematics and things like that, look closely. Look at the areas your child is struggling. But I said start with yourself. Look back to your days in the school when you were an apprentice learning a trade or something, trying to acquire a skill. What skills did you struggle even to acquire? What did you struggle to learn that you couldn't learn? That will help you to understand yourself and be able to help that child or that person around you. So look out for signs of struggle in particular areas of learning. And still what to look out for, it's important to find out that that child has shown certain degree or extent of struggle when you compare him or her with others of that age, but not just instant or spontaneous. It must be over a period of time. And then of course, if you look at that child having been given everything that is necessary, the environment is favorable, the school is good, everything is there, and the child is still struggling, then you may look out for those things. If everything needed for ideal learning is available and the child is still struggling, those are the things to look out for. I mean, there is nothing that you could say is a limitation, but the child is still struggling in terms of having to learn certain things. So let's look at learning difficulty. Now, according to DFE, that is the Department for Education in the UK, difficulties in learning are referred to as specific challenges that individuals face in the course of trying to acquire or use particular skills such as reading, writing, math, or communication. That's according to that department. That's the chronicle. That's what they came up with. And then we progress again to look at the fact that a learning difficulty does not affect general intelligence. Now, you saw the chronicle of those celebrities. They don't have a disability. Like I said earlier on, people often confuse disabilities in learning with difficulty. Difficulty is only limited to a particular aspect of learning. It's not learning overall. Like somebody has autism, for example, is different. Somebody who has had stroke is different. Somebody who has a mental retardation is different. Down syndrome, for example, and things like that. So learning disabilities they affect the brain. So they indicate or they portray neurological situations. And so you may not be good in maths, but you are good in drama, you are good in drawing. So you have a learning difficulty when it comes to math skills, but you are good with your hand, you can draw, things like that. So it's important at this outset to understand the difference or the differences between learning the disabilities and learning difficulties so that we don't confuse the two. So let's look at the most basic difference between the difficulty and disability. The fact, like I said earlier on, is the fact that a learning difficulty does not affect the person's intellectual abilities. The person is still good in several other areas. Like you saw, Nancy Cooper was for CNN, is a renowned reporter. You've got actresses, you've got Steven Spielberg. Okay, Steven Spielberg is a very popular, very, very renowned and award-winning producer that has produced many box office movies, for example. So it doesn't limit your ability in other areas. So it's important to help that child to identify the areas of strength of that child. So the person may have a learning difficulty in an area, and then the person just needs to channel his or her strengths or abilities in other areas of competence. So children with learning difficulties, they will underachieve academically. So again, I'm saying, don't judge your child or condemn that person on the strength of just academic assessment or achievement alone. So there can be sensory impairment, there can be biological situations. English can be a problem. Now, somebody else who is learning English as a second language would definitely have language difficulties. I mean, that's why in Cambridge exams, you have exams like you have papers like English as a first language and English as second language. If you are going for IELTS test, for example, and TOEFL, you've got to understand that there will be difficulties. If English is not a major language, if you are just learning English, you'll discover how complex English language can be. That's a difficulty, it's not a disability. So not being proficient in English is not a disability. Instead, it's a learning difficulty that's got to do with language skills alone. And so there are so many things that you have to understand about learning difficulty. Fortunately, you can go over this video over and over again so that I can understand what I'm trying to explain over and over so that I can have a grasp of everything in detail. So we are looking at addressing learning difficulties. How do we address it? It involves one, trying to target interventions, specialized teaching techniques, assistive technologies, and then of course you've got to support that individual that has the difficulty. Now we come to examples of learning difficulty. You've got dyslexia, you've got dyscalculia, you've got dysgraphia, you've got dysprasia, you've got dysphagia, then you've got auditory and then visual processing disorders. So we'll be looking at this in detail in subsequent slides. So first off, we begin with dysgraphia. Okay, dysgraphia talks about a disability or a defect that has to do with writing skills. So you look at your child's handwriting for somebody else who's in primary school or in high school and it's terrible. I've encountered lots of students like that. So poor handwriting is an indicator of dysgraphia. okay, and the person suffers and struggles with spacing words, the person is clumsy, cannot keep to the lines, that condition is called dysgraphia. It's not about being beautiful. Your handwriting doesn't have to be that fine, but excuse me, it's got to be legible, it's got to be readable, so to say. And this affects some students in their examinations because the examiner struggles to read what they have written. And so please, if you're a tutor listening to me, if you're a parent, anybody listening to this video, please try to look at the person close to you. And if you are the one as an adult and you are struggling with handwriting, welcome to the world of other people. You have dysgraphia, okay? So you may have to learn, because children who have this kind of difficulties, they have to be taught and helped how to improve on it. They may not be able to be like others, but at least they can improve on it. And one thing about dysgraphia is that it can affect the person's ability to space letters. There's the poor motor planning, because the part of the nervous system that has to do with motor pathway is defective, and so the person is not coordinated when it comes to writing skills. So, and it can affect the person's ability to think, okay, because there's this issue of coordinating thoughts and writing together. And so that's what we call dysgraphia, difficulty when it comes to writing. So the person is deficient in writing skills and competence. Next, we come to dyscalculia. So are you one of those who say that I'm not good with maths, I'm poor with maths? You have dyscalculia. No matter how much you teach some people maths, they just aren't going to do well. Thank God you can be a lawyer, you can do other things, you can be an artist. Just identify your skill. Now, so dyscalculia is classified as a disorder. So by the American Psychiatric Association of Diagnostic and Statistical Manual and Mental Disorders, that's DSM, the 5th edition, this is what it's talking about. So it's classified as a specific learning disorder. Okay, not so disorder is a defect, it's a difficult. Remember, it is not a disability, it's just a disorder. So that is how the psychiatric body here describes dyscalculia, and it's typical, okay, of children. Of course, when you are being taught something initially, the first time you are having to learn something, it's always difficult at the beginning, but with consistency and practices, you get better. But when it comes to dyscalculia as a defect or disorder or difficulty, the person will never be able to attain that level of math competence. And about 4 to 7% students have dyscalculia. So if you're a tutor like me, expect that ordinary magnification as a biology teacher, some cannot calculate it, converting micrometer to nanometer, millimeter to centimeter. Some children can't just perform it all up. And unfortunately, these kinds of individuals will have problems when it comes to taking jobs. Now, they can't work at a fuel station, for example. They can't work in grocery stores where they have to calculate money, because they will give the person that too much or too little change, because anything to do with figures, money, is going to involve having to do calculations. And when you are cooking, what measure of salt, what measure of condiment, for example, and so how do you calculate how soon or how early? So even timing is affected by dyscalculia. So if you have a problem, you are too slow, you don't take cognizance of time. When it comes to timing, you are either too slow or something, and then you have a problem with figures, maths, cooking. You don't even know the measure of what to put into what you're cooking. You have dyscalculia. Once you know this, you know what to do. You can ask for help, because it is not a disability, it's just a difficulty. You can use other people's help to make up for that. You don't have to look down on yourself or bite yourself about it. You can live through it. And next, we come to dyslexia. Now, dyslexia is the major learning difficulty. Okay, now the British Dyslexia Association (BDA) acknowledges that, look, the visual and auditory processing difficulties that some individuals go through is an issue when they are having to do some things in life. So a dyslexic reader, for example, will show a combination of abilities and difficulties that affect learning process. So dyslexia talks about the issue with learning generally. Those who are dyslexic, they cannot understand words. They have problem with words, reading, spelling. I've said it before in my video, okay, in my previous video before, that I had a student, of course, I nicknamed her Bridget. She was a fantastic student. She even got admission to study drama and theater arts. She's good with her hands. She's good with thinking, imagination, but she's very, very poor with when it comes to words. If she's writing, her handwriting is for, I mean, she can just look at the example of the students writing there. The person is writing plate and then it's just clumsy when it comes to words. So you can't judge that child because of writing skill. That child may have a dyslexia. In fact, it is the most common learning disorder. The most common. It affects a lot of people, but a lot of people don't know. Okay, so when it comes to reading, they are poor with reading words. Okay, so but they are very good in fine arts, creative skill, and things like that. It's only that they cannot just read words. I remember this student of mine, even when she had to sit for her IGCSE, I had to read the exam questions to her because when she's reading herself, she just can't understand and process the questions in the examination. And so we have to read the questions to her, and then she will process the question based on what she has had you read to her, and then she begins to answer the question. That is the kind of thing, that is help for that kind of person. So the characteristics have to do with issues of phonological awareness. When it comes to reading words, it's a problem. Then anything that has to, that's why I talk about verbal, anything to do with words, that person is in trouble. And those words are things that are written, not spoken. The person is good with spoken words. If you're speaking to that person, the person is good. But when it comes to reading, no matter how excellent or how simple or explanatory what is written is, that person just can't process anything that is written. And we come to another learning disability, difficulty. This is dyspraxia. Dyspraxia has to do with motor functioning. Okay, the people with dyspraxia have problems with movement and coordination. Remember, it doesn't affect their intelligence. So look at those key things. Okay, when somebody has dyspraxia, what the person has is, according to the National Center for Learning Disabilities, anyone with dyspraxia will have difficulties in planning, completing tasks and things like that, and then sometimes even waving hands, turning the head, things like that, even brushing the teeth. And your star, if you enjoyed the franchise, the series of movies on Harry Potter, the lead actor Daniel Radcliffe had dyspraxia. You may not notice because it was diagnosed early, and so he was trained. He had to work with therapists. Okay, he had to work with psychoanalysts and things like that. Psychologists helped him. So all of these things did not show. Remember, you wouldn't have known that he had dyspraxia if you are not probably listening to me in this video, because all you see was what you saw on the screen, because that is a strength being shown on the screen. So again, dyspraxia has to do with movement, coordination. The people with dyspraxia are poorly coordinated. That is their own difficulty, but it's not a disability. And of course, ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Some people are just go people. You just can't tie them down. That child disturbs the whole class, is boisterous. When the person is in the class, the person sleeps off. The person is always looking out for the break. When are we going to leave this damn class? When will this math class, this chemistry class just end? The person is just bored. But the moment the bell rings, the person is out carrying chairs. Look at that child shown on this slide, carrying chair on his head while others are calm. Look at that one trying to jump up. The people with ADHD are just damn active. Of course, they get worn out eventually. They stress themselves. These people are very good achievers. Let me say it. People who are active, once they got started, you can't just stop them. They are very active. They are achievers. But it's a big problem to stop them. And so usually we end up scolding that child because we call it a misbehavior, misdemeanor. So children in school setting, even in a home, the child just pisses off the siblings. The siblings are tired of that person. The person wants to play when others wants to read or watch the television. The person just can't sit still, and the person irritates other people, never being able to sit down, just can't control his mouth. The person wants to interrupt other people, wants to just talk, wants just to contribute. The presence of that person just has to be felt. So read the story of this woman. So the BBC interview of this woman is what I want you to read. So if you try to log into this particular link, you read the story of this woman talking about how hyperactivity helped her eventually to achieve success in life. So if you are an active person, you look at your level of activity is above the norm, above other people's activity levels. When they are tired, just imagine early in the morning, there's no time that you just can't go. You are just a go person, but you can get worn out eventually, and it can affect health as you grow older. So let's look at a couple of statistics here. About 6 million individuals in the US of different ages have ADHD. Of course, because like I said, they can think outside the box. They are very active. That part of their brain is very active. They can solve problems. If you have a problem planning anything, if you told them, they can give you very constructive advice because their brain is thinking out of what you are thinking. They are not constrained by books. This is not school now. But when it comes to thinking, creativity, planning, party, and a journey, for example, you can count on them. They are always giving you advice. They always think about problems. They look at exigencies. They look at things that can go wrong. Rain will fall. The tire can deflate. They are just the people you can rely on. Okay? And then, of course, you have 20% of the population generally has dyslexia. That's according to the Yale Center for Dyslexia and Creativity. Okay, so it means that ADHD is very common. We just see ourselves as being active without knowing that it's a difficulty because it's a big issue not to know when to stop. And so you can't pay attention. You are nibbling at your finger and things like that. You're writing on the table when the class is going on, for example. And then because your working memory is just hyperactive. And so they have a problem sitting straight, trying to concentrate. They have to do things their own way all of the time. And so it can affect what is called the executive functions of the brain. Please click on it, search for it, and read more on what is referred to as the executive functions of the brain. When it comes to executing certain information, certain tasks or ideas, it can be a problem, but it can also mean that that person is very able to when it comes to executing his or her own ideas, that person is very fantastic. Okay, so ADHD people are high achievers because they think out of what you can think. They think the way you don't think. Their thoughts are always higher than other people's thoughts. Now, this particular one, dysphagia, is being mentioned here because it's important to realize that speech can be affected in some instances. If somebody has had some health challenges like stroke, for example, or brain damage due to an accident, okay, the person may not be able to talk. So this is not about reading or writing, this is about speech because the muscles, the part of the brain and the muscles that control speech around the mouth, they've been affected by a damage to the brain. And so the person may struggle to verbalize his thoughts. So dysphagia arises from injury to particularly the part of the brain called the temporal and the parietal and the frontal part of the brain. So this is a damage to the brain. This is not a, so this is a disability. So it's different. It's just listed there. It's added so that we can remember we are trying to ensure that we understand people and ourselves. So if you are listening to me, you have somebody else around you who struggles to speak. The person may be having dysphagia, but if the person has not had a brain damage, no previous knowledge or record of accident, for example, the person cannot be diagnosed as having dysphagia. So the diagnosis of the person as having dysphagia must be that the person has a damage to a part of the brain. So it's a disability, it's not a difficulty because it's going to affect general processes. But what the person is going through is just the issue of being able to speak, okay? Because the damage to the so many networks throughout the brain, these damages have affected the person's ability to communicate. And so the person's processing ability when it comes to speech is deficient or defective. So dysphagia is not general, but it's just being mentioned there because the person has a problem when it comes to speech. Of course, you see the meaning of this here, okay, and faces. So please understand this. So remember, this is all about understanding of so many things that we overlook around us. And so just a couple of things to talk about. What causes a learning disability? Like we said earlier on, there are so many causes. A lot of things, for example, it can be before or during birth. Birth can be a problem. There can be loss, the oxygen deficiency that can affect the brain of the child. The child can have a disease or an illness while growing up, like meningitis, and it can be hereditary, okay? And then the person can be born with it. There can be a trauma, like I said, during birth or after birth. The child might have contracted a particular disease that led to seizures and accidents or damages to some parts of the brain. So we begin to talk about how to help individuals with disabilities or difficulties. There's something called SEN. SEN is special education needs. Now, some children and young adults will definitely need extra help to learn, help to understand, okay, because they aren't just like other people. So they will need your support, parents, guardians, neighbors, colleagues, siblings, and tutors, and things like that. And so because they've got a disability or a difficulty that is making them not to be at par with other people, okay, so you should give them the kind of support that gives them the same opportunities like the others. You can't compare them. I started this video by talking about you are not justified to compare children after this video. From now on, try to focus on understanding that child before you begin to condemn, and see if you could offer help or suggestions that may help that individual. Even adults go through disorder because those disabilities or difficulties were not diagnosed early, and so the person just accepted it and grew with it. Just notice that he or she could not do some things, and so the person grew with it and the person is living with it. So it relies on so many people around the individual offering help. And still talking about solutions or how to help individuals in this category, there's this issue of inclusive education. Now, successful inclusive education will involve accepting and understanding individuals with learning difficulties and attending to their peculiarities, because you have to attend to their physical, cognitive, that is the way they learn, academic, social, and emotional aspects of their lives. They will need all-round help because they have struggles. And so the entire idea of inclusive education is to consider their peculiarities when planning curricula, even when it comes to planning your class, okay? You're trying to, even the arrangement of sitting, okay? Even the way the students sit in the class can be structured in a way that includes individuals with peculiarities. That is the whole idea behind inclusive education, is to ensure that these individuals' peculiarities are considered and included in planning and in actual class. And it's important for schools, colleges, let's just institutions generally, to ensure that they try as much as possible to give equal opportunities and facilities to children with special needs. Of course, this may involve special costs. This is where governments and NGOs come in, parastatals, those who have the financial means to help. So, I mean, most of the time we have schools for the blind and the deaf. We hardly have institutions considering this kind of difficulties. We just accept the child as a failure. The child is just not doing well, the grades are low, okay? We just stereotype that child because the society has not been informed. So what this video is trying to do is to ensure that we put a spotlight on these problems so that more of us can understand and begin to blast it. So if you listen to this video, please share it. Let it go viral. Never stop sharing it. Keep sharing it with all your contacts so that more people can live a better life than they are living and stop struggling. And this is where governments have to be responsible. A lot of money should be committed into this special need issue to ensure that, I mean, The other nations, okay, UNESCO has a particular quota or percentage of what a country should commit into education every year. But most countries don't even do this. When we are talking about education, there's hardly a sizable budget that is given to education sector that even goes to inclusive education, because most of the time those who are at the top, those who are policy makers, they don't even know what is going on. Ignorance is a problem. So if you are listening to me, or you are opportune to know somebody else who is a minister of education, somebody else who is a manager, somebody at the top who influences education policies, please give this video to that person to watch. When you are formulating policies, when trying to plan, strategize, and things like that, please try to understand that there are people whose life will be affected by the policies that you have put in place. Because not everybody would enjoy or do well in the natural setting that we have presently. So governments have to begin to employ psychologists as part of their cabinets. Maybe ministers of education henceforth should be psychologists who will be able to do things to help people with special needs, not just the blind and the deaf alone. So what can we do? We've been talking about solutions and solutions, but let's try to look at the formal issues here now. Okay, if you're evaluating individuals based on performances alone, educationally, they won't go far in life. So how can you help? Talk to that child. Now that you are learning, if your child is affected from what you have listened to in this video, or if you have a student, you are a tutor, or somebody in your class, just or your neighborhood, sit that child down. Let the person know that he or she is not a failure in life. It's not a natural failure. It's just that the person is having difficulty in some areas. Let the person know how good he or she is. So study the person before calling him or her. Know that the person is good in arts, can play football and things like that. Let the person feel good about his or her strength. Okay? And if you can coach, you can help, you can mentor, please do this. What's important is stand by that person. Let the person have a self-belief and develop self-confidence that he or she is not a failure. Those struggling academically, that person can still do well in life, like the others that we have learned in this video earlier on. What can still be done? You can have instructional intervention. Okay, so you can structure your class differently as a teacher. The way you teach, you can begin to prepare videos on the visual aids. You can use all kind of assistive learning to ensure that you consider them, like we talked earlier on about inclusive learning. So there can be the issue of what you use that can aid that person's understanding. That is the issue of instructional intervention, materials that can aid that person's understanding in your class. Still on what can be done, okay, there's assistive technology. So PowerPoint or the visual aids, all kinds of things. You can use games, okay? Games, there are many games. So go online. There are games that can enhance the person's understanding and performance eventually, not just writing and talking and talking. So stop talking, at least demonstrate. You can use quizzes, you can use drama, you can use games, you can do presentations. Just use assistive technology. In this generation, these Gen Z individuals, they like to be involved, they like to explore. So use to maximize their generation to bring the best of your child or the world. If you're a tutor like me, your students. So how can you still help them? Special education, there are drugs they can take, and there is therapy. Like I said, if you are a student trying to discover what to study in life, you can, most people want to study medicine. Few people want to study physiotherapy. Physiotherapy is a very good course because you can be a speech therapist, for example. You can help those who have disorders like this. This is the field of physiotherapists and psychology. So you may be able to do this. So you can help, okay, as a therapist in these areas. And still on help, there can be support groups. For example, there are groups like that help those who are alcoholics. So you've got Alcoholic Anonymous, you've got so and so Anonymous. So you can identify people with this kind of disabilities or difficulties and bring them together. So because there's the issue of iron sharpens iron. If somebody knows that he or she is not alone in this problem, because if everybody around you seems to be better, superior, you will be cowed. you will feel inferior, complex sets in. But if you see people who are like you feel encouraged that after all, I ain't alone. It's important to understand that in every problem in life, you're not the only one. But if you don't get to see those who are like you, it's a problem. Because if the people around you are always seemingly better, then you can never amount to anything, because you will look at yourself from the radar or the prism of those people who seem to be doing better, rather than looking at the others who are like you that you can learn from, and together you can encourage one another and go through life and still be the best that you are supposed to be, as nature wired you to be. So the summary here for all of us listening is that understanding the distinction or the difference between learning difficulties and disabilities is important for all of us stakeholders. You're a parent, you are a tutor, it's important for us. And then difficulties encompass challenges in specific areas, but may not affect the person's overall intellectual abilities. And so disabilities are broader. So it's important to understand that not being able to read or write or do maths does not mean that the person is not good in other areas also. So it's important to recognize that person's strength so that the person's weakness is suppressed or dwarfed by the person's strength. And so as a round off this video, I want to acknowledge these individuals and bodies. These studies took months to chronicle. It took time. And I had to give credit to all of these bodies and organizations whose works I put together to make this video possible. And so you can, if you want to learn more, you can link, connect yourself, search these particular bodies, because it's more than this. But I cannot end this video without giving credit to these bodies whose works spanned years, decades, and it's their works that I studied to make this video a possibility. So thank you all for your good works. If you are a member of these organizations or bodies or medical councils or agencies, thank you for your studies. Okay, thank you for what you are doing, and may you have more wisdom and more revelation to help more and more people to live a happier life. And so I come to the end of this special edition. If you enjoyed it, please share the video. Let it go viral. And I want to hear, let's generate comments. I appreciate those of us who have been watching the video. I'm seeing the views, but I'm not seeing discussions. If you are a medical doctor, psychiatrist, psychologist, if you came across this video, or you know somebody else who is a medical doctor, please let that person see this video and contribute. I want to hear from experts. I have talked as a tutor. Remember, we are about biology. So what we are doing is biologists explain this. We explain things that we see from the biological point of view. But there are other people whose experiences and exposures and understanding can shed more light and give more flesh to what we are doing. So you can help us in BET series to do more. So you can add. So let's contribute. So I want to hear your comments through Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and YouTube channels. I want to hear your comments, your feedback, your contributions, okay? Please like and share. Let us generate contributions. Let us have fora for discussions so that it can go round and more people can live a much better life. Remember, life can be good. Life can be interesting if all stakeholders, if we don't live a selfish life, if we are all selfless, if we try to understand other people, we will fight less. Rancor, bitterness, okay, they are engendered and fostered by lack of understanding. You want to be right all the time. You want people to see from your own point of view. You don't try to understand other people's perspectives. That's wrong in life. What we're trying to say is that in here in BET series is that we all can understand one another. First, understand yourself, then learn to understand other people. And when we understand, with understanding comes love. And when we have love, then we can overcome strife and contention. We will fight less. Of course, there's no way there can be no fight in life, but we will fight less. And when we fight, we find it easy to make up when we have struggled eventually. So thank you for listening. I thank you and appreciate you for those of us who have been watching our videos and sharing them. Thank you so very much. But beyond liking the videos, please share them. Let the lessons you are learning from our videos make life better for you and other people around you. So once again, thank you so very much. Till we see again in the next edition, Thank you very much. I appreciate you once again. Bye.